What's up, music fam? There's just something about the music of yesterday that touches a part of us that a lot of new music can't seem to reach. But while I love older music, I also think we need to continue to make music that can reach the souls of our listeners. So I'm back, making 2 R&B beats as I tell you why I think older music just seems to feel better, and what we as music creators can do about it. If you enjoy this type of content, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you're like me, you've probably sat down and thought about what makes our music today so much different from the music of the Motown era, or maybe 70s, 80s, 90s, or even 2000s R&B. Whatever type of older music we compare today's music to, most of us would agree that a lot of today's music seems to be missing something. But before I get into why older music seems better to us, let me tell you what I'm not talking about. I'm not talking about nostalgia. I'm not referring to the emotional connection we might have to a song or to an era. I'm simply talking about the actual sound of the music. So why does older music just seem to hit different? Well, here's my list of 7 reasons why older music just seems better than today's music. Number 1, they played real instruments instead of using VSTs. When we use any real instrument in a song, we have to find a way to record the performance of that instrument. Whether we use a microphone or some sort of cable, we go through a process of transmitting that performance into an electrical signal. There are all kinds of things going on during the performance that make the recording of that one specific instrument special. Each microphone or even cable has its own unique sound. The room itself has a certain sound. And even the number of people or objects in the room will affect the sound of the instrument. There are so many factors that affect the sound of real instruments. A guitar can sound totally different on different days, simply because of the temperature, for example. So even though VSTs have come a long way, songs using those same VSTs can start to lose character when everyone uses those same VSTs without making any adjustments. But there are some ways to add some of that character back, even if we're using VSTs. We can actually play the VSTi with a MIDI keyboard instead of just using a keyboard and mouse. This will add back some of those slight imperfections and give the recording a little bit more of a human element. We can also run the VSTis out of the computer and through some sort of outboard equipment, just to give it some analog sound. Or we can simply add some VST effects to at least make the VSTi sound a little different from everyone else using the same VSTis. Hey music fam, before I get too deep into these beats, I want to let you know that I finally released my very first loop pack, Melo Signature R&B Loop Pack, Volume 1. This is my collection of 123 original R&B loops and stems that I'm very excited to announce, because this is something a lot of you have been asking for a while. You can take a listen, and if you like what you hear, purchase at the link below. And as always, I want to thank you in advance for your support. The second reason I think older music seems better is that they use multiple musicians. No 2 musicians play exactly the same, no matter how experienced they are. Even the size of the musician's hands and their strength level make a difference in how hard they strike a drum or piano chord. Whether or not a person has long nails will affect their guitar playing. And even how closely they hold a guitar to their body will affect the sound of that guitar. The difference in these things will often be small, but let's add up just a few variables. We have the guitar's favorite amp, string type, fingernail length, pick size, temperature of the guitar, tuning style, breathing pattern, and pluck strength. And then we have the drummer's strength, material and age of the drum set, tuning of the drums, room size and dimensions, closeness of the drum mics, and what type of day the drummer might have had that might determine the playing style. And then throw in hundreds of variables for all the other musicians. You'll quickly start to understand why having multiple musicians with their own styles, experiences, and personalities would add to the unique character of a song that could not easily be replicated. And aside from all those variables, there's also this thing you'll never quite understand unless you play it alongside other musicians. It's called a vibe. It's the feeling when musicians feed off of each other's energy. It's the feeling when you play together for a little while, and then you finally find that ultimate connection, and you lock in to create one sound, and you're no longer just one musician. If the recording is captured correctly, that same vibe and emotion can be heard and felt by the listener. This is one of the clear differences between older music and the music of today, but it's one that has a clear and simple solution. Musicians just need to start back playing together. The third reason I think older music sounded better was because there were so many limitations to work around. There were far less studios to go around, and it wasn't easy to get into one. Once you actually found a studio, you had to get there, and then you had to pay for studio time. This was not a studio with unlimited recording channels, and they usually had far less equipment than you probably have right there on your laptop. Even the biggest and most advanced studios couldn't compare to the unlimited number of compressors that you can have on your laptop. Times were much simpler. This was when studios had signature sounds because of their choice of equipment, along with the taste and style of the engineers. Because studios were not as accessible and more expensive, people took recording a lot more seriously. They were much less likely to scratch a song and start a new one because the clock was ticking. This meant that they were invested in that song, and they were going to make sure it came out right. Session musicians were being paid, so they came prepared, because if they didn't, they could lose their job and mess up their reputation. Singers came prepared because they knew time was limited, usually. There was a limited amount of tape to record to, or later, even a limited amount of hard drive space. So there was more of a sense of urgency to get each take right. But also, because of the limitations of recording media, or even channels to record to, there were times when they let some imperfections pass through. And those imperfections added something special. Now my solution to this one might seem crazy or excessive, but I think it's pretty simple. Just like they used to book studio time and consider that time precious, I think we should dedicate time and space for our music. When at all possible, I think it's very important to set aside a space to create music, a space that's used for nothing else. And you know that when you go to that place, you're there to create. But if it's not possible for you to have a space dedicated just for music creation, you can still set aside time for your music, and don't let anything interfere with that time. And don't focus so much on the equipment that you're using, but focus more on creating music you love. And this leads me to the fourth reason I think older music sounded better: analog recording and mixing. And I know I already touched on this one, but imagine automatically having a preamp, EQ, and limiter on everything you ever record. That's a mixing console. And then imagine that every single channel on a mixing console sounds slightly different from the channels next to it, or any other channel in the world, even itself. The temperature of the board itself and every other piece of analog equipment played a role in how it sounded. And again, there was a character in those boards that couldn't be replicated. Simply running a signal through the console was enough to set a recording apart from a computer-based recording. But because there were either no VSTs, limited VSTs, or lower quality VSTs, studios relied more heavily on analog hardware, and it did make a difference. Now, I know we're not all about to go out and buy thousands and thousands of dollars of equipment, and we don't have to in order to get some of that analog character and warmth. But there is some affordable analog equipment you can buy to give you a similar flavor and can be arguably just as good. But until then, experiment with some hardware emulation plugins. Try, for example, just putting a Neve preamp and EQ on every channel and listen to the difference in feeling and sound. Now, My fifth reason I think older music sounds better might sound similar to one I've already mentioned, but it's a little different. Older songs usually have multiple people collaboratively focused on each song. It wasn't at all rare for a song to be touched by a composer, songwriter, producer, vocal arranger, lead singer and background singers, band members, recording engineer, mixing engineer, and mastering engineer, all before being handed over to a label executive for approval. This process could literally take years, starting with the songwriter and composer sitting at a piano writing out the music. Now we can just sit down at a keyboard and compose without writing out any music, or waiting for studio time. I'm not saying I want to go back to those days, but when all those people played roles in the creation process, something about that made it official. Every one of those people was an expert in their field, and they took their job serious. Now we often confuse and merge the roles of composer, producer, musician, recording engineer, and even mixing and mastering engineer. While I think it's a good thing to know all these different skills, I do think we should know the difference in the roles and even take time to focus on the different aspects. For example, a producer is not always one of the session musicians, but he or she should definitely know music because the producer is responsible for the overall outcome of the song. Most producers today are required to wear multiple hats, but I think we can still capture some of that essence of yesterday's music by either collaborating or just setting different times aside to play different roles. The sixth reason I think older music sounded better is simple. There was way less music. And because there was less music, there was a lot more effort put into each song. There's so much more music today because music is easier and cheaper than ever to make. And there's nothing stopping anyone with about $10 and a laptop from creating a song today and releasing it today or tomorrow. You could literally download free software right now, record with some earbuds and your laptop microphone, and in about 45 minutes have a song with no money, zero experience, and zero talent. Then, for a few dollars, you could take a terrible song and distribute it worldwide for less than $20. And chances are, if it's bad enough, it could go viral for being so bad. So because the music supply is so great, the demand has drastically decreased. Saying you're an artist or a producer now doesn't mean what it used to mean, because the listeners hear or meet so many other artists and producers. Our listeners see music posts online and they run the other way, because music has less value now because of the law of supply and demand. Now, how do we fix this? Well, first, we need to put more effort into learning how to create music. Then we need to create music the listeners can feel. I honestly believe that if we all were to do those two things, to increase the quality of music, it would desaturate the music market, and it would in turn raise the expectations of the listeners and cause them to fall back in love with music. So that brings me to the seventh and final reason I think older music sounded better. Because the listeners are no longer listening, music creators don't seem to take as much pride in what songs are being put out. Because the music market is so saturated, music creators know that their music is going to get lost in the crowd. They know that the chance of all their family and friends hearing their music is slim to none, so they're not really pressured to make good music. I remember when working on a project with an artist was actually a big deal. Everybody around, even my neighbors, knew we were working on a project, and they couldn't wait for the release. Now, even family and friends might not know we even make music. I meet so many music creators who don't even tell people that they're an artist or a producer, because they know no one takes artists and producers serious anymore. So what can we do about it? We could all just quit, or we can continue to do what we love, but make the decision to reclaim the respect of what it used to mean to be a music creator. We can't change what everyone else does, but if we all raise the bar within ourselves, we can help to set a standard and raise the bar overall. We do have that responsibility, because believe it or not, today is the old music of tomorrow. It would be an embarrassment for future generations to look back at us and skip over our music to listen to the music that we refer to as old music. We've been given a great opportunity and a great responsibility, and we should remember and appreciate the opportunity we have within our reach. As the music creators of today, let's remember that music lasts forever. Let's reclaim what it means to be a music creator, so that our future listeners can say there's something about that music from the 2020s that just hit different. Alright, music fam, that's all for now. But if you enjoyed this video, check out one of these other videos I really think you'll like. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time, you all be blessed.